So welcome to the April Tien Tarot, and we are covering an interesting and somewhat controversial subject today, which is how to do readings when it's a relationship and both people are in the room. Now, I'm going to just start by sharing a little bit about how in the past I've tried to kind of handle this. I have nothing against reading for couples or for thruples or, any number of different relationship configurations. However, I do it always with the caveat of, you sure you don't want your own readings today? Maybe each of you have a little time. Okay, but then we're going to be together. We're going to be totally transparent, okay, and get everybody seated and at the table. And it's been my experience that 9 times out of 10, if you do a reading for a couple, you are going to uncover the one thing that they really don't want to talk about. And if you do this, understand that your job is to ideally make sure that when they leave the room, that whatever is going on in the relationship, that they're not going to go home that night and want to kill each other. So that said, it is totally fine to name it if you see a problem in a reading, to offer strategies. And I think that when you maintain a kind of an affectionate sense of humor with both parties while you're doing the reading, and you keep it balanced, that actually this can be a very fulfilling, rewarding activity that will, in many cases, bring people closer together and give them a level of witnessed honesty that can be very safety making for later conversations they might want to have between each other, with themselves. So that said, we're going to talk a little bit about my relationship spread. Some of you know this one, but in case you don't, or in case you haven't thought about it in a while, we're going to do a little review of my relationship spread. And we're going to look at how you can do it for a relationship involving 2 people, as well as how you could do it with a choice between 2 relationships, as well as how you could do it with a polyamorous relationship with multiple different parties. So if, for example, someone comes in and says, I've got a relationship with this guy, I want to know about, how it's going to go, or I've got a relation, I've been dating these kind of different guys and I'm starting to feel like I have to make a choice, or I'm polyamorous and I see this person and this is my primary partner, and then I have this person and then I see that person once a year, but it's really special. Cool. There's a reading for all of it. And this reading is a modular spread that you can build out for as many parties as necessary. Something to consider about this spread is that it will show you the positive aspects that each party brings to the relationship, as well as the negative aspects. And there can be, in addressing both of these, some moments where, as the reader, you can kind of take on the role of a loving auntie to this couple or to these people who are sitting in front of you and be like, well, reading says that from time to time, so-and-so can be a little bit of a Miss Bossy Boots, and that from time to time, you over here can be a little bit demanding. So we're going to see how you can find a way to meet each other's needs and feel really safe in this relationship, even though these things are present. So just keep in mind that your job throughout the reading is to continue to presence love. All right, so the basic spread is a 7-card spread. This is for a relationship between 2 people. And in the first position, which will be as the reader all the way to your left, you're going to put 1 card, and that represents the querent, the initial party, the one who booked the reading is how I usually do it. So whoever it was that booked the reading, and then there's usually that they're bringing along another person. And so I put whoever booked the reading as card number 1. Right next to that is card number 2. That's the other party who you're reading for. Then sort of next to that, next in line, but now above, we're going to have what are the positive qualities here? And directly below that, what are the negative qualities here? Then, so now we've got cards 3 and 4. So now we're at 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we go 5, 6, short-term outcome, long-term outcome. And then down below cards number 5 and 6 in the middle, there's one more card, card 7, free will card. If you accept that everything I've said so far seems true and you want to make the best of this outcome, here's what you have to do. So that gives people a little bit of spaciousness for, I mean, if you're sitting there with a couple, and this has happened to me, like there's just like, oh, we're in love, back and forth and snooky and cuddle. And then you say, okay, great, let's like lay out the cards and see where this is going. And then you lay them out and it's like the King of Swords, the, Tower card, the Devil, death. Like these cards come out on the table and that couple, it's like holding hands and their little faces are like going like, they're starting to feel more and more anxious. They're like, ooh, wow, yeah, babe, that's, and you're looking at it and you're just like, oh, please, can I have like a 9 of cups or a 3 of cups or sun or a moon or something. And no, now it's going to end with, like some kind of like 5 of swords card or something like that, which is not actually a bad outcome, but you have to get there. Then you're sitting there and all 3 of you are like, well, this was supposed to be like a fun, cool thing. And now here we are. So when this comes to pass, and it will, learning how to not diminish the truth of what's in front of you, but to absolutely acknowledge it with love is a gift that you can give to this couple, because the reality is they already know that there's something that they want to talk about or that they need to talk about. They would not be sitting with you if there wasn't. Most people who schedule a tarot reading, whether they just think they're doing it for fun or whether they're actually like, I am going to run this person past my tarot reader because I trust her. Either way, whatever that spectrum is, that is usually a sign that there's something that's leaving a question mark. And sometimes that can be a really complicated question mark. And you have the capacity as a reader to help tease it to the surface without having either party be fully triggered and escalating into a negative pattern from their past or a negative response. So in our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the first 2 cards that represent the 2 people involved, and this is just a relationship between 2 people. The first, you're basically in this set of 7 cards, you're going to do 3 mini readings. So don't be intimidated. And this is something that I try to teach in my tarot classes. Like when you have a multiple card spread on the table, 9 times out of 10, it is actually several small spreads. And if you break them down into the bite-sized chunks, it makes it much easier to interpret each piece and then to take the main messages from those pieces and bring them together as a whole. So the first reading inside of this reading that you're going to do is compare contrast between the 2 parties. So the two parties involved in the relationship now are on the table. Their cards are sitting there. You're able to see who they are to each other and who they are in the world. And there's going to be a few really important things to look for. I think it's really important, first of all, to just throw the idea of gender out the window. If a female bodied person shows up as a king in the reading, if a male bodied person shows up as a queen, or that, it doesn't matter. So do not be tempted. Like if you get a card that has a masculine presenting figure that represents the woman and a card that has feminine presenting figures that represents the man, do not switch them in your mind. The other thing is, sometimes you will see what you see in those two cards, and they'll laughingly try to write it off and be like, no, I think you have it switched. I'm more like that and she's more like this. No, you place the cards where you place them. And this is actually just a really good rule in tarot, is never let the querent tell you you've pulled the wrong card. It starts to undermine your relationship between you and your 78 best friends. So you have to try to kind of just say, well, we're attracted to people sometimes because we're so different, but sometimes it's because we share things alike. And so you might be more alike than you think. And if you recognize aspects of yourselves in both cards, then maybe there's something that's really good here for you about this, way of being in the world that you can both grow and learn together. So you're going to take those two cards. You're going to look at a couple of different things. First, you're going to look at how do the suits relate to each other via the elements. So if you have, like, say, the person number one in a relationship is showing up in the suit of pentacles, person number two is showing up in the suit of swords, you are going to want to point out that potentially the one who's shown up as the suit of pentacles tends to be much more invested in things like self-care, food decisions, how the household works and feels. You're going to want to pay more attention to things like stability and security. And whereas the second party being represented by swords is maybe more of the person who keeps everybody laughing, the person who helps do all the problem solving, not necessarily always the best in terms of following through with a plan, but great if a problem has come up and the poor pentacles person is like struggling to see what the solution will be. So you first just start, and that's because pentacles relates to earth, swords relates to air. Then we also, of course, have wands relating to fire and cups relating to water. And in our major arcana, if you get major arcana in those positions, either one or both parties, that's sort of like a wild card insofar as this is a person who is in a time of great transformation and flux in their lives. And that is something to really pay attention to. So if you've got like someone who shows up as like the nine of wands, and then another person who shows up as the hermit, you can pretty much guarantee that the nine of wands person has been looking for a relationship for a long time and feels very happy and fulfilled and wanting to be connected in the relationship. And the hermit may or may not have either come out of a relationship where they felt very alone, come out of a relationship and gone through a time of being alone, or has been alone for a long time and is really feeling a little bit unsure about getting into this relationship. And obviously the way that the cards land, and if it's upside down or right side up, and the other cards on the table are going to inform the rest of this reading. But just as a general rule, people in flux in their lives often will get the signifier of one of the major arcana. So then you can really help increase a client's querent's connection to the reading by being able to name what kinds of changes they're going through. So now here's an example. You've got person number 1 shows up as the 3 of Cups, and person number 2 is showing up as the Moon. So in this dynamic, the 3 of Cups person is feeling very emotionally connected, is starting to invest, is starting to become more, I guess you might say just like more adapted to the relationship. And the person who's showing up as the Moon might be going along with that, but still has inner reservations. Finding the way to articulate this to the 2 people sitting in front of you without crushing the one's spirit or outing the other one's internal process might involve you saying, you're looking down at that and saying, well, it looks like in a certain way you both have a lot of the same goals. Emotional connection is really important to you both. It seems like so-and-so tends to be more forthcoming with their inner process, whereas so-and-so is a little more private with their inner process. So before either of you takes the next steps in terms of making plans for a future, you're going to want to make sure you have really honest dialogue about where you're both at and what your expectations are and what your plans are for the future. That gives both parties the little heads up to ask, to check in, to connect without it being like, girl, he's not necessarily that into you, right? Like, you don't want to come right out with that. You want to just be like, it's just like, maybe don't send out wedding invitations yet, because it's a process. But where that process is going to land, anybody's game. And as you look through the rest of the reading, you might see that on the other side of it, 10 of Pentacles or 10 of Cups, those would be very good. You also might see a Lover's card, not necessarily always meaning happily ever after between these 2 individuals. We'll get to that in a second. Could be that there's choices involved. Now, when you are laying this spread out, so that first reading, you're looking at the elements and suits. The second thing you're going to look at is whether or not one or both parties is a major arcana, because that's going to speak to where they're at in terms of their life process. Number 3, you want to look at the numbers. If one person is a 10 and the other person is a 1, they are in very different places in their lives. And there's going to need to be some measure of accommodation or compromise in order for them to both get what they want. A 10 person is usually like a 10 of Pentacles or 10 of Wands or 10 of Cups is usually fairly settled. A 10 of Swords person may be extremely unsettled. That's a notable departure. A person who's in a 1 position is open and just at the beginning of something and has something that's just starting. It's up to you to figure out, is it that the disparity in the numbers is so great because they're on different pages as a result of what they want in the relationship? Or are they just at different places, as in, like, one has been in their job for a really long time and the other is starting a new job, and they're kind of like here having this reading because they need to make some decisions about whether or not they're going to try to buy a house together. So you have this opportunity in looking at those 2 cards, those first 2 cards, to start to engage a dialogue that opens up some doors for them to share a little bit about how they see the relationship going. And that's just by addressing what you see. Like, it says, I see so-and-so here is like a 9 of Pentacles, and this other, and then so-and-so over here is like more of a 2 of Swords. Looks to me like First one has been kind of like working really hard at something for a long time, has gathered up some information, some goals, some projects, some resources. And person number two, it looks like you've got some great ideas and plans, but they've not been coming fully to fruition. And it's possible that sometimes that causes some tension in the relationship. And you 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, yep, that's true, and it can be sometimes because the settled party is pressuring the unsettled party, or it can be sometimes that the more unsettled party is feeling like they have to hurry up and catch up or compete with the other person. So looking at these two cards gives you like a little quick snapshot, and that's just about where they're at. So your next reading inside of this reading is the two cards in the center, above and below. What's working, what are the pros, what are the strengths and the benefits, and then the con. What's not working, what are the challenges, what are the difficulties? And I will just let you know, if you see a 3 of Swords, a 7 of Swords, King of Wands, or obviously the Death card, the Tower card, the 9 or 10 of Swords in that bottom position, the likelihood is strong that this relationship is not meant to last. And so if you see something down there that's got, and that's because 3 of Swords indicates heartache and betrayal. 7 of Swords indicates deceitfulness. King of Wands is often philanderer. 9 or 10 of Swords is fear. 9 of Swords is fear. 10 of Swords is disillusionment. Obviously, death is an ending. The Tower is things crumbling down. So if you see those cards in the negative position, sometimes you're going to have to say, well, it looks like there are some hard times ahead. If you can weather these hard times, then look to see if there's a possibility for the future. But if you can't weather those hard times, don't feel badly. You are giving it your very best. And you can kind of give a little bit of encouragement there. If you see any of those negative cards, what we might deem negative cards, up in the position of what's beneficial and positive, then you have the ability to ascertain that some piece of trauma or tragedy or difficulty is what brought that couple together, that they came together in a difficult time, that they've witnessed each other's strengths through a time of difficulty. And then you can see, looking beyond at the rest of the cards, does it look like this is going to make it? Or was this just a relationship that came about as a result of trauma bonding? And once that period of trauma is over, will they go their separate ways? Now, obviously, it's easier to be super honest about that kind of a thing when they're not both sitting right in front of you looking at you, because if it's just your one client that you're talking to, you don't really have to worry too much. You can just speak, frankly about it. But when they're both sitting there in front of you, you often don't want to just be like a complete downer. And you also don't want to cause a weird little triangle where they go back out into the world and decide they're going to prove you wrong and thereby waste their time in an unhealthy relationship for longer than they need to, which that can happen. So, look at your positives and negatives cards and think about these two cards. If you're just reading for two people and they're right in front of you, these two cards represent what's working and what's not working in the relationship. They're not necessarily about a single person in the relationship, though they can be depending on what shows up. So for example, let's go back to our previous, a previous example. We've got our Three of Cups card and our moon. These are two individuals, one of whom is like in the midst of a big time of change and may or may not be as fully committed to the relationship. The other of whom is like all in, emotionally ready, but maybe has a little bit of a pie in the sky dream about the relationship. So now you get over here and let's just take, for example, that up at the top, in the position of what's working, you've got a King of Swords card, and down at the bottom in the what's not working, you've got the Five of Pentacles. So here is a moment that is available to you where you can blow someone's mind. You can say, you know, it seems to me as if so-and-so has been a little bit more reluctant to make a firm commitment to the long term in this relationship. But this person is never going to tell a lie about why they're going through this. And what it looks like is that they are waiting for things to be more financially secure before they make this commitment, not because they are, trying to like wait for something better, but because they want to be their best when they bring that to you. And when you are able to show someone, like, I'm just telling you, this can like help. They will sit there and be like, oh my God, we've spent like 25 hours in therapy about this. Or they'll be like, oh my gosh, we've been fighting about this. Or, I've actually had someone turn and be like, babe, why didn't you tell me? And the guy being like, I totally tried to, like, and you're just able to kind of hold that space and witness them through it. So occasionally you will see in that pros and cons that it's actually, there's an issue of something that one party or the other has been carrying, and that is causing a problem, but that it doesn't need to cause a problem, that it could be resolved easily. Looking at the top and bottom cards, also, you're going to be paying attention, obviously, for the story that is written in that pros and cons card, in those pros and cons cards. But you're also going to be looking for, again, disparities such as suit disparities, major and minor arcana disparities, and you're going to be looking for numerological disparities. So if, for example, you get like a Three of Pentacles in the positive and then a Nine of Swords in the negative, you can say, to that couple, hey, it looks like financially things have been a little bit difficult and there's some big decisions that you need to make. But I want you to know that those decisions are going to come out really, really well. And whilst you have every right to have your feelings and be worried about how it's all going to turn out, I actually think if the two of you just trust each other, trust yourselves, and trust the plan that you've created, it's going to go great. So you can kind of put things in perspective when you look at, the seeds planted by, say, a Three of Pentacles are stronger than the doubts sown by a Nine of Swords. So you have to kind of look at those two in comparison with each other. So that's our second little reading. And then the third mini reading inside the big reading is the short-term outcome, the long-term outcome, and what you have to do, cards 5, 6, and 7. And in this, you're basically saying, short-term outcome is, conventionally speaking, about the next 6 months to a year. The long-term outcome is, conventionally speaking, could be a year or longer. And then the card about what you have to do, that often is a timing thing that is relevant to what the card says. So just be aware that, the timing may shift according to what you see over there on that side of the reading. in the short-term outcome and long-term outcome, you're really looking for that long-term outcome, especially when a couple brings you, we've been really struggling with a decision, or we've been really struggling to figure out what we're supposed to do next. We're having a hard time, taking this next step. It seems like we have this goal and we've been holding this goal and we're blocked. You're going to really look to see in that long-term outcome, is this going to happen? Are these people going to manage to make it? And in then you can reference back to the short-term outcome, which is the process of, or the journey to get to that longer term outcome. And then you're going to look at the what you have to do card to basically give them the next steps of their assignment. So let's say, we've got our couple, there's a little bit of reluctance to commit on the part of one party, the other's totally in. We can see that it's because there's some financial disparities or financial difficulties that they're facing. And then we see over there in the outcomes that there is some kind of, short term, like 5 of Swords. Long term, though, is Wheel of Fortune. And what they need to do might be something more like 8 of Wands. So if we look at that and we go, oh, okay, so in the short term, yeah, you're going to have to kind of knuckle down. You're going to have to discipline yourselves. You're going to have to really make sure you're on the same page with what you want and hold that shared goal. But in the long run, it is going to work out. Fortune does take a turn in your favor. Your hard work will pay off. And what you really need to do is to work on overcoming your fears and relaxing about the journey to get there. And further, make sure you take plenty of time outside. This is such an 8 of Wands thing. Take time outside of your usual routines to rediscover each other. So you two have a routine, and obviously, like working people, I tend to have those. We get very settled into our routines. Make sure you get away, go take a day, go have a weekend on a regular basis so that you can experience each other elsewhere. I feel like I could do a whole class series just on literally what every single card might imply for various different types of relationships. It would take me like a year to teach that class. I think we'd have to do a card like every week. But there's so many different implications, that the cards can bring. But I do feel that the 8 of Wands is an under heralded ally to relationships that are dragged down by routine. So just keep that in mind for the future. If you're doing a reading for someone about a relationship and one of the outcomes or their free will card is an 8 of Wands, it generally will do wonders for them, either in knowing what to do to go forward or what to do to get away if they just change up their routine. If you were to take that 8 of Wands in another direction with a different querent and say, so let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped holding the relationship together with all the little things that you do every day? What would the other person do? That person would be like, well, yeah, I wouldn't, like, we probably wouldn't be together. And then you just sit there and look at them until they get it. If it's only one person's glue holding the relationship together, change it up so that your glue is not holding the relationship together, and see if the relationship itself is strong enough to hold. So as we kind of, analyze then these 3 readings in context, what you're going to have as you back up and take this big picture view is you're going to have a snapshot of the personalities involved, a snapshot of the core strengths and weaknesses, and a snapshot of what's coming next, which is then very easy to weave into the narrative. And I've used this example before. If you tell the story, once upon a time, there was a couple, their names are so-and-so and so-and-so. This is how party 1 was. This is how party 2 was. The great thing that they always loved and to do, or always loved about each other, or it always worked, it was such a great aspect, was this. but there were also hardships. They looked like that. Ultimately, what happened was this, and that, because free will card, this. You've got a nice, tight, whole story that you can actually tell them their fairy tale, or, it's not always a fairy tale, but you can at least tell them the story of their relationship. Now, I want to, kind of like move on just to show you, because you can do this with somebody who's got either a choice between two or more partners, or somebody who has multiple partners, or somebody who's got partners, even if they're all there in the room with you. So let's say, you've got a couple who are each other's primary partners, and they've also brought their girlfriend to the reading. So they're all sitting together and they're like, yes, we're so excited. We're having new relationship energy. This is so wonderful. But we also know that we've got to be really aware and conscious about how we go forward with this so that everybody stays happy and nobody gets hurt. And that's why we're here. Because usually that'll be the reason that they've come to get a reading, is like, how do we do this? So when you step into that kind of a paradigm, what you're going to do is you're going to set up 3 cards on the left, 1, 2, and 3. So there's the basically the inner dynamics of the relationships, the outer dynamics of the relationships, and any known problems or issues. Then you're going to set up person 1, their pros and cons and their next steps, person 2, their pros and cons and their next steps, person 3, their pros and cons and their next steps. So you'll in effect have a 3-card reading that describes the big picture of the relationships, and 3 mini readings, 1 for each party involved. Then over here, and those are 4-card readings each. And then over here, you're going to do 2 more cards, or maybe 3 more cards, the short-term outcome, the long-term outcome, and then either a free will, what should you do card, or I often, in this case, put hidden information, what we don't know but should, in that spot. Because I feel like the outcome cards of each of the individual 4-card spreads in the middle kind of gives you the sense of what to do. So I replaced the free will card at the end with this is what's held on the altar of mystery, but you should really know about it so that you can go forward. So obviously you can see how that's a 13-card spread, by the way. So 1, 2, 3. Well, if you have only 2 parties that you're looking at, but you can have more, obviously it can go much bigger, but like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then another 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3. So you've got 2 3-card spreads on either side, and as many stacks in the middle as you wish of 4-card spreads that describe each individual. Then your job is to play matchy match. So we're going to look at your 3-person or 4 or however many personalities, and what everyone's strengths are that they bring to the table, and where everyone's vulnerabilities and challenges are that they bring to the table, and honestly acknowledge them. If you see that somebody's got, like, here you go, perfect example, you've got in our throuple here, we've got 2 people who are in this long-term relationship and then their girlfriend, and you see that in the girlfriend's 4-card spread, in her negative position, you've got a reverse Queen of Swords. That girl has mother issues for sure, 100%. Very important that if there's a female in this couple that she's dating, that woman not end up becoming a substitute for the mother, and that she doesn't feel threatened by that woman's role in the relationship, as it is. So this is where you can start to see some of especially in those cards about their vulnerabilities and challenges, you can start to see what are the aspects that they're bringing to the table that could become very problematic later if they're not aware of them. And as a reader, one of the nicest things about your neutral, caring presence, you're kind of neutral, you're not on anyone's side more than anyone else's when they're all in the room. Although I will tell you, if it's me, my client, and I'm just reading for one client, I am always on that client side 100%. I don't owe anybody else anything. That client is my number one priority. But when I have multiple clients in the room, you're neutral. You want them all to succeed. You want them to all do well. You want them to all be happy. You don't feel like you're going to put any blame on anybody for anything. You are able to see everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. You being able to name some of those things and witness them ahead of time means that they're going to have that like, ooh, okay, I better watch out for that. Like, because they don't want to cause problems. Most people do not go into a relationship wanting to live out their most desperate wounding. And yet, here we are. We often do. We're human. We have these issues. So, if you can help name those and point them out, let people know, So what I might say to the third party in that relationship situation, especially if the couple that we're talking about here has a very strong long-term primary relationship, what you're going to want to say to them is to say, well, it looks to me like, you say to the new girlfriend, looks to me like you have found the stable relationship scenario that you've been looking for, that allows you to be part of something greater than yourself, that's nurturing and whole, but also allows you to maintain your freedom. As long as you stay aware that you are not trying to replay any existing family dynamics, or that you don't bring some of the challenges from your childhood into this setting, because it's not the same thing as the family that you had growing up, you are going to stay really happy here. And then you can address the couple and say, it's really important for you as long-term primary relationship holders in this scenario to make sure not to make a pet out of this person, where she might feel infantilized or left kind of as a lesser party who doesn't have a voice, because that will help diffuse the possibility of some parent-child dynamics playing out that would otherwise really be an unhealthy thing in the relationship. So you can see a lot from those negatives as well as from those positives in terms of how they all relate to each other. So you're going to basically want to compare like your reading of those middles. And this is my recommendation, is to give each person their own reading about where they are at in their life, that doesn't actually necessarily have anything to do with the romantic relationship or the commitment, but rather is just about where they're at. And then bring those three narratives together and say, and here's where I see that you are really able to support each other in your individual lives, as well as where you might be triggering to each other. So just be mindful of that, because once you've named it and it's out there, it's no longer going to be wreaking havoc in the subconscious. It's out there, everybody's aware. So if you see so-and-so has abandonment issues and so needs a lot of personal space, that's something you can bring really to the forefront and say, looks like so-and-so here is like really social, loves to be around people, feels really sad when the party comes to an end. And then so-and-so over here tends to be kind of more of a loner and likes a lot of alone time. I imagine that sometimes that means that this person feels a little bit abandoned or a little neglected, and sometimes this person feels a little smothered. Just so you're aware, neither of you is actually doing that to the other. It's just that you're very different in terms of what fulfills you. So-and-so feeling more fulfilled by connection and so feeling more fulfilled by alone time. Neither is right nor wrong. They're just very different. And So just don't take it too personally. If, this one wants a little man cave time or wants a little she shed time or whatever. And if this one feels like, oh, well, I really need to make sure we have quality time. So, if you encounter that, make sure that you look on the calendar and you've planned out a couple of different dates that you're going to be together, and a couple different dates when you're going to spend time apart, so that you have the joy of reunion. And that can help take that thing and smooth it out. And I've had it many times where couples then said to me, you have no idea, we fight about this all the time. When I say something like that, when I point out, it's amazing when you point out, especially to an established couple, you're just different people. And they're like, right. We fell in love because we were different people. That's one of the things I like about this person. They're not me. But once you've been together for a long time, it is easy to start to fall into those kinds of patterns of expecting the other person to be more like you, or to want to be more like you, or to want the things that you want. And rarely, actually, when I've done a reading for a couple like this, it's been very rare that I pointed something like this out and they looked at each other like, no, that's not us. Most of the time they're like, oh, right. So allow yourself to have the confidence to express what you see, especially about the fact that you see very different, unique personality traits, and where those could cause problems, as well as where they can be really complementary, because you can bring it around, like with our, more, you can use lots of different language to describe this, by the way. Like, I find it very useful. I'm not like 100% sold on the whole theory of the love languages. I think it's more complicated than can be neatly broken down into just a few stereotypes. That said, I do find the love languages to be a very accessible way of relating some of these problems, because you can leave your querents with two things: one, a name for what's going on, and two, something they can go look up online so they can read about it and be like, oh, well, until we realized that my language was physical touch and her language was acts of service, we were like all over the place, but now we know. And they're happy and they'll start to figure it out. But you may or may not decide you want to use something like that. I find it to be very helpful. I think it's great if you're going to read for a couple to go quickly beforehand, go read the little love languages webpage, get clear on the different types so that you can sort of use a little of that language if it comes to pass in the reading. And it really is great to be able to be like, and let me give you an action item. Go home and look this up online and read about it. Because what do people love to read about themselves? It's why we like to read our horoscopes. It's why we want to know our Enneagram type and our everything. I mean, it's why a lot of us got into all of this, is because we're in a deep spiritual self-study. Your querents are too. They're just not always equipped with a language to express what they want to express. And sometimes by the time they get to you, some of these problems have become kind of entrenched over time. And the relief in having a way to name it that is not involving a language of blame is palpable. You'll feel it. They'll be like, oh, babe, I didn't realize you like acts of service. Okay, got it. So you're going to be happier if I like just make the coffee rather than wake up and kiss you all over your face and tell you I love you. Yes, says party number two. What I really want is to come and get my coffee and then kiss you and say good morning. And there you go. Problems, a big problem can be moved out of the way, at least can be started to be moved out of the way. Okay, so that's that type of reading. And then your final, your final reading is this big picture. What's going to happen next and what don't they know that they should? So going back to our threesome. Short-term outcome, 3 of Cups or 3 of Pentacles or 3 of Wands. That any 3 would be a pretty good 3 in that setting. Long-term outcome, Now, let's say you have a threesome in front of you and you can't help but notice long-term outcome, maybe the lovers. And the card, which isn't necessarily a card saying that this is going to be love forever. It says there will come a time when big decisions need to be made. And then you've got, let's say in your mysteries left open, things they don't know but should, you've got the Page of Swords. That can mean a lot of different things. It's good to start with saying maybe to the new girlfriend, I'm curious about one thing. Have you been thinking about maybe that you wanted to go away to go to school somewhere or move somewhere for an educational opportunity? Because that Page of Swords is the card of the successful student. A lot of times Page of Swords will relate to academic or educational opportunities and growth and learning. It can also be a card about learning skillful communication. And so if it usually, I will just go ahead and ask right out, have you been thinking about going away to go to school or anything like that? Because that's the one thing that I see that could, shift the landscape in the future. And basically then your job is to say to that person, don't give up your dreams in order to stay in this relationship. Definitely go to school. It's in the cards for you to go, but you don't want to say it like that. You don't want to come right out and be like, like you're going to go on from this. Instead, you might just say, well, just so you know, in the future, you should absolutely prioritize the educational opportunities that call to you and trust that if the relationship is meant to be, it's going to last no matter what changes it goes through. And if not, you've had a wonderful experience together and you can go off and go to school and, have your life that way. It may be something like that happens where you see a card that could disrupt the landscape. If you come right out and you say to that person with the Page of Swords, well, have you been thinking about going to school? Or maybe you just say, has anyone been thinking about an educational opportunity? Because maybe a member of the couple is a professor who could be going to teach somewhere. If they're like, no, like that doesn't really resonate, you say, okay, no problem. Thank you for answering. I just had to ask because this card has a couple different meanings and I wanted to make sure that one was off the table. Then, you can go in the direction of this is going to be about learning how to communicate successfully. And especially if so-and-so has had mother issues or another member of the couple is feeling reluctant or another member of the couple is more shy or for whatever number of different reasons that might be there, you can say, it's going to be really important that you all get on the same page about communication, because communication is a very, very essential part of this relationship. But it's something that, like, for example, you might think you're all on the same page about certain things, but until you've actually talked about them, you're not on the same page. So looking at that card of mystery as not necessarily only applying to one person, but potentially applying to both or all parties in the relationship is going to give you a sense of what needs to be drug up from the shadows and brought to the surface so that it can be discussed, seen, witnessed, negotiated, or resolved. And again, what you see in that card will influence how you interpret the other two, because you might see that your outcome is something like a 3 of Wands and that your card of mystery is, let's say, the Page of Swords. You pretty much know that one of the most important things for this threesome is that no matter what, they never lie to each other, not even casually. So you would want to say that out loud. You'd want to say, this relationship looks like it's going to be a success, looks like it's making you all really happy. I can feel the energy here. Love to see this happiness. I do just need to say, make sure that you really respect total honesty and transparency with each other. That is going to be very important. So even though there are certain things that you might think, oh, that's private, or I don't want to bother them with that, or I'm not really sure if that's something I would discuss with them. Like, for example, if the girlfriend is going to start dating someone else, might be like, well, I'm with them, but like, we're not exclusive. I don't need to tell them about someone else. But you absolutely should, because the three of wands as the outcome is saying trust is the glue that will hold this together. If you can't trust, it's like gonna fall apart. So kind of in review of that, you've got just a quick little review. You've got this card, this set of cards, which describes the whole picture of the relationship and its, its inner and outer workings, as well as any problems. You've got the middle, which is a series of small readings, each about individuals, and then the combination of all of them. And then this small reading on this side, which is what is going to need to be witnessed and known, and how are we going to be moving forward. So when you are having a relationship scenario, and let's say some of these challenges have come up, I have actually had people straight up get into arguments in the reading room with me, where I point something out and the other one is like a little bit too, maybe like a little bit overly excited that I saw something that they've been complaining about for a while. That's happened, where it was like I mentioned something and the person is like, see, I told you, or I've been telling you that and you wouldn't listen to me, but now see, she said it. I've had that happen, and where you kind of have to be like, okay, I'm not in this I'm not going to be that point on your drama triangle. You can diffuse that a little bit if it starts and just by being like, hey, you know what? This is one of the reasons we go for readings. It shows us things about ourselves that we might not have been ready to hear before. And so there's nothing wrong with the fact that each of you has come to this with kind of different ideas about what the relationship looked like. What we're here to do is to make sure that you get on the same page so that when you leave this room, you both are facing the same direction and going there together. And you can kind of help mend little things that way. You kind of have to, as a reader, sometimes be willing to just say, everything up until this point, we're stopping time, we're taking a time out, and we're saying, ollie ollie oxen free, everybody hurts. Okay. So like whatever's happened before that brought you to my table, even if we're looking at it like a hot mess of a drama here, ollie ollie oxen free, everybody gets to base safely so that we can figure this out and all get on the same team. And if you do that, and you can actually help accomplish that with a couple or with more than one, more than a couple, you will be their reader forever. Like you will be the person that they trust with their relationship, because they know that you care enough about both of them, and that you're not trying to like, do anything that would make one or both of them look or feel bad. Okay. Last little thing, and then we're going to do a test. We're going to do a practice one. Sometimes a couple that you've read for in the past has a breakup. And then you find that even though you are reading for this couple still as individuals, they have broken up, and you have to be able to hold, like, you have to be like the Queen's Guard in London. You have to be like standing there, and no matter what, you're not going to move. You're not going to tell the one about the other, because that really will put you at a not so good spot and a not so good point in their drama triangle. I have had it more than once actually multiple occasions where a couple that I used to read for scheduled, even though they hadn't talked in months, were broken up, totally separate, scheduled readings with me on the same day. Because their circadian rhythms are still somehow attuned to each other. Or maybe because they're thinking a lot about the other one, or are thinking and ruminating about the past and want to make sense of something. Ethically speaking, if so, let's say, there's Dawn and Lisa, and Dawn and Lisa have been a couple for 12 years. They were really happy. They had dogs together. They have a house, they have a garden, and now they're breaking up, and Dawn is moving on. She's going to, go to school and start over. And Lisa has met someone else. If you are reading for them and they ask about the other, you can tell them whatever you see in the cards. You cannot tell them what the other person has told you. So if Dawn comes and is like, so is Lisa seeing anyone? Well, it says that, at this point where Lisa's at is three of wands. So I think, probably keeping her options open and maybe out there kind of restoking the fires for her own life. But that's not really what you should really worry about, because I think the two of you agreed you could move on and see other people, right? Yes, we did. Okay, cool. So then no trust has been broken here. If Lisa's like, well, I just really miss Dawn, and I don't want to get in the way of her dreams, but I really don't want to move away with her when she goes to school. Is she thinking about me? That one comes a lot. Is the person thinking about me? And I've tried and I try. I had a client last week. I've been working with her on, she's got a really strong crush on someone that she met 3 years ago, and crush has not gone away. And so asked, is the person thinking of me? And, I look at the cards, but realistically, it's very difficult to know that for sure. Quite easy to project a lot into it. And not only that, but it's kind of the wrong question to be asking. Most of the time, it's better to redirect that question and say, well, whether this person is thinking about you or not, they were an important person in your life because they woke something up in you. And that thing that they woke up in you has not gone back to sleep and is still kind of looking for where it's going to land. So rather than worrying about whether this person that you met once 3 years ago is still interested in you, or whether you allow yourself to feel like, wow, I had this amazing surge of energy and life force and I felt so alive, see that as this person did their job. And now what you're really looking for in the world is somebody who gives you that similar feeling. So recognize the feeling. The feeling that you had is not necessarily only attached to this person. The feeling that you had is something that could be awakened by any number of different people who are suited to you. This can be something that you can help someone either move on from a past relationship or move on from basically obsessing over. And when I said that to my client, she was like, okay, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. She said 3 times. And I was like, okay, but it helps because we do have proliferative thoughts. And as a reader, one of the things for you to recognize in others is to see that the people who have come to you because they have proliferative thoughts about another person, it's not necessarily so that you the highest, let's put it this way, the highest expression of your role as a reader is not to go psychically spy on someone. It's to help that person understand why their mind keeps going back to someone from the past. And it's often simply because that's the last person that made them feel a certain way. And so they want to reconnect with that feeling. And they think that the person who can give them that feeling is that person, rather than seeing that they have that feeling naturally within themselves, and that different people or situations or circumstances could help that feeling to well up. When, and then really last, when somebody says to you, like, oh, I want to see if, like, I want to look at my relationship life, ask them, is there someone that you want me to look at in particular? Or are you looking just in general? Because it's different spreads. Because the spreads that I've shared tonight are about known individuals. If you have somebody who's not in a partnership or doesn't have anyone specific in mind, but is just curious about their relationship for the future, you're going to want to do a different type of spread, maybe something more like a Celtic cross, that would help that person see their own path and their own potential, and not necessarily use these spreads, which are particularly focused on specific individuals. All right. So now is the time. Let's look at a relationship question. And this is what I think we should do. You tell me if you think that this is not good, but I think we should look at Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and see what is it in a reading that we could see about this situation. Because I don't think any of us should put ourselves on the chopping block as the example for this particular reading. We all have to be together in classes in the future. We don't necessarily want to go into all that. But I think that Tara says, laughing my ass off. I think that since this thing has been in the media, you'd basically have to be asleep to not have heard of it. I think we should just lay some cards down and see the quality and characteristics of each of these parties, what was good, what was bad, and where's this going? I was telling my husband today, I haven't even hardly been watching it, but it's like literally everywhere. So you're down with me to do this little look? We're just going to look based on known things. We're not going and spying on them. We're just going to go and look at known things. Great mother, holy mother, wise and gentle mother, abundant and loving mother, protective and healing mother, I call to you. I'm here today with the Tia and Tarot class, and together we're doing this reading about a couple who is in the media right now, quite a bit, with a lot of personal pain and trauma being brought to the surface and revealed. And we'd like to know if there's anything that, as observers of this societal phenomenon, we should know, or that might help make it make a little more sense to us. And we're open to anything else that's important or relevant at this time. We call upon all the benevolent ancestors, guardians, and guides who walk through this life on this world with us. We ask you to be here now and guide this reading. We come to this reading together today with courage and strength, honesty and integrity, love, compassion, and gratitude for the journey of life. And may what we learn here today be of benefit to our class, and turning outward, may what we learn here today in some way, great or small, also be of benefit to the entire universe. For our class to understand better about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. So since Johnny Depp is the one who brought the most recent case, his card goes first. And Amber is next to him. And then what was good here? What was not good here? Shorter and longer term outcomes. And what do they need to do if they wanted to somehow right this ship? How interesting. Okay, I'll read out the cards, what we have. Johnny Depp is the reversed Page of Cups. Amber Heard is the reversed 8 of Pentacles. What worked in this relationship is the upright 4 of Swords. What did not work in this relationship is the upright Page of Pentacles. Short-term outcome, King of Wands. Long-term outcome, Three of Wands. And what would need to happen for that to go smoothly is the reverse Two of Cups. So take a minute, and if you feel like shifting, sifting those cards out of your deck and laying it out, or just writing them down so that you have them in front of you, we're going to go through it. I definitely see that there was some, was she the ace or the eight? Good question. Eight of Pentacles reversed. I mean, right off the bat from this Page of Cups reversed, I can totally understand why Johnny Depp is getting so much sympathy. He's very much coming across as the injured and wounded person in this dynamic. And I would say that he was injured and wounded by this dynamic. That's legitimate. I think so. Just so you know, total transparency, I think the both of them are toxic and got into a very toxic situation and brought out each other's toxicity. So there's not going to be like anybody in this reading who's like more innocent or more the victim. I think they both did a lot of bad things to each other. That said, Johnny Depp is coming across as very sympathetic to the media, and in this situation, I see a lot of people getting behind him. I see a lot of people kind of writing off his things that he contributed, his issues, as well, he did that because he was hurt. That's a narrative that's come up quite a bit. Well, he's not actually like that. He just did that because he was hurt. And the reverse Page of Cups can indicate a bunch of different things. Interestingly, the reverse Page of Cups, as you might recall from classes prior, in my book, sometimes represents gender ambiguity. And Johnny Depp has always played that kind of like, long hair, sensitive, wears eyeliner dude, like kind of has this ambiguous quality all the way back to the 80s, which is where his like most loyal fan base still lives. Like we are all children of that era. And so his very loyal fan base has always loved that, even though he plays all different manner of male characters, he often brings a kind of a feminine energy or a softness or a sort of a gender bending sexiness. Like, Captain Jack Sparrow, I gotta tell you, like, I remember a period of my life where the answer to everything was Johnny Depp in black eyeliner. So, there's an element here to this Page of Cups that says he is actually coming across as greatly victimized in this situation, and that obviously like his hurt is very evident. Like when he speaks, when he talks, his frustration, his emotions, they're right at the surface, and they tend to break through in his expressions, his way of speaking, and in the court, the transcripts reveal this. Anybody have any other or additional interpretations about the Page of Cups as Johnny Depp in this situation? Page of Cups reversed as Johnny Depp in this situation. Anything, any interpretation you might have of the Page of Cups that I haven't thought of here? I have one other, but I'll wait and see. Anybody have anything you want to say? Give a little wave. Don't be shy. Yes, go for it, Rowan. Let's hear it.
I find that generally, like with the cups, especially reverse, some of the sort of downfall of that suit can be addiction and living in that sort of delusion, finding escapism, things like that.
Yes, really well put. And it's been something that's come up several times in the trial, has been regarding his use of alcohol and other substances. So very, very helpful. The other thing that I see in Page of Cups is somebody who at a certain point just does art for art's sake. They just do the thing because they find it creative. I think that it's been a long time since Johnny Depp was necessarily personally motivated in his acting by money alone. I think he's chosen a lot of really quirky, interesting, and weird roles for the sake of exploring his art. Whereas with the Eight of Pentacles for reversed for Amber Heard, I see her role in show business is much more on the business side of things. She's there to make money. She's there to become famous. She's raised within a paradigm of that being the thing that is considered, the ultimate. So where I see his Page of Cups as more kind of like art for art's sake and pushing the envelope creatively, I see that she has kind of gone in a more conventional direction based on financial security and the desire for seeing and being seen. The other thing I see in Amber Heard's Eight of Pentacles reversed that I can't help but notice is, what have I said in the past about Eight of Pentacles in work? Do you remember? It's where you take the entire set of your talents, gifts, and experiences, and you pick them up out of one job and you move them over to another job and you put them down. And you're still basically doing the same things you've always done, but just in a new setting. And I can't help but notice that a lot of references have been made to how she did this in prior relationships. And that people that she dated before were also put off by certain behaviors that she manifested. And it's come up quite often, references to like Elon Musk or other people that she dated in the past. And so much so that they were even kind of called to give statements about her prior behavior in relationships to try to establish some type of pattern here. But the other thing that I see with this Eight of Pentacles is that there's something really sad about that, it's a reverse. So when it's, when the Eight of Pentacles is successful, it's like all the things you were ever really good at, and you get to do them in new and increasingly challenging settings so that you get better and better at them. But when it's reversed, it can just feel like you're on a treadmill and like you're not going anywhere, and like you're just doing lateral move after lateral move after lateral move if it's in the career. And I think that there is an aspect here where whatever it is that that she and Johnny Depp are both playing out, and the things that she has potentially played out in dynamics she's played out in past relationships, that's what they're saying in the, tabloids or in the news or whatever. That there may be something here where it's like she's extraordinarily frustrated because she doesn't see that what she keeps trying to find love. She keeps trying to find someone who will really care about her, but who will also meet her energy. And she kind of keeps ending up with people who are very erratic. And she seems to want stability. In one of the messages that was played of a recording of their conversation, Johnny Depp is saying to her, I really need to leave right now. I'm very, very, very frustrated, and I'm really angry, and this isn't going anywhere good, and I need to leave. And she begs him to stay and explains to him that when he leaves, she feels like he's removing himself emotionally from her, and it's very triggering to her. It's clear that she's got some abandonment issues, and the idea of him walking out, even just for a few hours to go cool off, is going to trigger something in her that's going to make it worse. So it's like this really tragic, like it's like a Greek tragedy when you really think about it. Here he is saying, please, I will not be the person I want to be if I stay here with you and do this right now. And she's saying, please, if you leave right now, it's going to make me so much worse. There's no win there. Nobody wins in that scenario, where there are particular issues, his need for space and that Page of Cups. This is another thing. I'll show you the two cards. She's looking at him and he's looking away from her. Just the figures on the cards. The page, which is on my right, but is on the left in the reading, is looking off into the distance with their back to that 8 of Pentacles, who's looking at that page. So there's something here where, in a way, I think maybe she thought that she was going to get finally the creative, eccentric, unstable, yet somehow stable father figure that she needs in a relationship, who would be willing to go toe to toe with her and stay and stick it through. And meanwhile, she got an eccentric, potentially self-involved introvert who needs space. And so her acting up and acting out and all the depictions that we've read about that I'm not even gonna get into, like, are her pleas for him to parent her. And he's like, I didn't sign up to parent her. I didn't sign up to parent you. I'm over here on my own. Okay. So it's just, that's my little quick assessment of what I see the major, possibilities could be for their wounding. Okay. Now, interestingly, those two cards are reversed. There's only one other reverse card in the reading, which is that what to do card. And that's the 2 of Cups. And honestly, I'd say that, like, one interpretation of that reverse 2 of Cups was they should have never gotten together in the first place. But another is that all of this animosity is actually, and I hate to say this because, like, I would get crucified if I said this in some circles, but, like, I really do think that sometimes breakup animosity is what has been done with all the love that had nowhere to go. I actually have no doubt that at a certain point, these two individuals thought that they loved each other. Whether they were capable of loving each other the way the other one wanted to be loved is a whole other story. But I have no doubt that each of them brought love to the relationship, but that ultimately the love that they brought was not received by the other party as it was intended, A, and B, that once the love wasn't received as intended, it had nowhere to go and it turned to animosity. So that's just like my hot take on that little 2 of Cups reversed and our 3 reversed cards. Now, the rest of the cards are upright. So I actually do think that in time, this ship will be righted and we will stop being dragged along in the tugboats behind it. But for now, usually it should be the tugboat dragging the ship, but not in this case. What's worked in this situation, 4 of Swords. What's the 4 of Swords? What do you think of? I'm going to toss it out there. What do you think the 4 of Swords means in the positive in this situation? Apart from everyone just being like, oh my God, I'm never ever getting in a relationship. Like, apart from people just being like, I can't even handle. What do you think a positive aspect of the 4 of Swords could be in this situation?
Maybe to a certain extent through discussions, they were able to find some stability. They were able to meet at a kind of more of an intellectual meeting point rather than emotional.
Well, I think that you're right if they had chosen not to be so public with it, right? I think that the positive, right? Because 4 of Swords, you're right, totally right, Tara, to ascribe communication to the suit of Swords and element of air. But in this case, the element of air has blown it like with the 4 winds all over the planet. And now we all know it. We all know, we can't help but know. I saw Drew Barrymore saying, I can't believe they're actually just like giving us this information. She said, and I know what it's like to live under a microscope, but like at a certain point, you just don't like talk about it. And I think, that in a way, if they had just, maybe had some kind of discussion or mediation privately and quietly before things went completely off the rails, it would have probably gone much smoother. And I don't know how, it's hard to tell how this could possibly get back there, but I agree with you. If they did choose to just sit in a room with one level-headed person and have that person basically be like, here's I wish they'd invite me. I feel that I could help them. Like, just to be like, I see this and I see this, and I think that the two of you had a lot of triggers that you didn't know were triggers when you got together and you then blew up. I think that they could have gotten there. I don't know if that's the possibility now, maybe. I do think that whatever happens in the court, either in the actual legal court or the court of public opinion, the only true resolution that is going to ever come of this, true resolution, would come within each individual themselves doing the work quietly on their own to improve. So whether she needs therapy and he needs therapy and they just need to like not talk for a good long time. Yes, this was in what actually worked. Yes, since they're apart. Exactly. Them being apart is really good. And potentially if they could just quiet themselves and go within and identify their own toxic behaviors and their own triggers, there would be tremendously more healing. Instead, we have the town herald, the page of pentacles, the agent of, material reality out there. It's now all over the place. It's, everybody knows about it. But I also feel like money, I gotta tell you, underneath all of the emotion and the stories of betrayal and hurt and drugs or liquor or whatever else there is, I feel like there's an unaddressed financial component here. There's something about money and prestige. And I do think that in terms of this situation, it would be wise for any couple who are both famous to have some kind of a clause that, or like, not like a prenup. It's like, even like if you don't get married, like a pre-dating form that says, I will not go after your money. I will not go after your reputation. I will not try to tear you down unless, X, Y, or Z terms are met. Like if you actually like beat me up, or if you cause me to lose work, or if you hurt me or hurt my family, then, then this is null and void. Because what I see here with this page of pentacles is that immaturity is running this whole thing, this whole display. And I also think that there's some unspoken or unrecognized financial component to all of this that we may or may not ever be privy to. I mean, they're talking about everything, but I don't read everything. So there may be some aspect like that. I would say in this situation, this is what, as readers, we should be kind of outsiders looking for, is to follow the money and to see what ends up happening financially at the end of all this. And particularly, it looks like, it really looks like they have both been trying very hard to ensure that the other one never works again. So that could hurt both of them. Anybody see anything else about Page of Pentacles that I might be missing? Page of Pentacles as a negative aspect in this situation. All right. So let's go on. We've got the King of Wands and the Three of Wands as the short and long-term outcomes. Does anyone want to say what they think is going to happen? It's a little scary to prognosticate about this, isn't it? I'm a little scared to prognosticate about it. I'll tell you this. I think that there is a possibility that Johnny Depp is going to prevail in this case. And that even if he doesn't prevail in the court of law, he's going to prevail in the court of public opinion. I think that doesn't mean he doesn't have things that are pretty bad that he's hiding, or things that are pretty bad that he's done in this situation. I do think he brought toxicity to the table just as much as she did, despite the fact that a lot of people are rallying around him. And you know how I feel. Those of you who've been coming to these with me for a while, you know how I feel about the King of Wands. The king, I mean, not all fire signs, but like, I do feel like this kind of King of Wands energy is often that there's a very, that there's a conquering element. There can be a conquering element to it, but at what cost? So I think that it's possible that he could prevail, whether that means that he gets restoration of any of the prior deals that he's had that have now all been lost, or whether that just means that in the future he's got sort of a piece of paper that says his name is cleared, or whether in the future it doesn't actually matter whether his name is cleared or not because people care about him. I think he's going to prevail in this situation, at least in this round. But this Three of Wands tells me that it is entirely possible that there will be a third court case. There's already been the one in Britain, and this is this one that they're doing now. She brought, I can't remember how it all went down, but he lost the one in Britain. But I think he might win the one here. And even if he doesn't, I think he already has, because people are saying it. People have already decided it, whether or not the judge says that. And ultimately, I think it's possible that there's going to be a third court case with that Three of Wands. It says that not all has, believe it or not, despite everything that's being spoken and said and written, not all of it has come to light. So there may be yet further legal wrangling down the line. And I also think that this Three of Wands very seriously says that both of them, understandably so, are going to have a really hard time trusting lovers in the future because of everything that's happened here. And then I've already given you kind of my hot take on that reverse Two of Cups, which is they probably should have never been together. But that said, this is potentially a case of that their flawed and wounded love did not have healthy places to go. And so it twisted in upon itself and became something toxic, which happens so often that I can really afford to have compassion for it. I don't need to judge that. I definitely have not been like I'm not doing it here. I'm not making hay of this situation. I just think it's a timely thing for us to look at because it's in all the news. And I also think that it speaks to a depth of our human condition, how much people, even with all of our flaws and all of our pain, want to be loved, and the kinds of things that love can drive us to do. There is a reason why in ancient Greece, Aphrodite's Orphic hymn says basically that she has the power to bind every tribe of man and beasts in magic chains of mad desire. And there's reasons why, in addition to all of her beautiful, wonderful qualities about love and marriage and sweetness and tenderness and joy, Aphrodite also has a reputation for causing people to do things that are absolutely unspeakably horrible in the name of desire. So this is a tutelary, cautionary tale, I think, that we're seeing played out on the Greek tragedy stage of social media, where we're seeing the condition of all of the exhilaration and all of the tragedy of love and its possible expressions and misfirings and misexpressions being played out. And so let's send a little good energy to these two individuals, that it all work out for the highest good for them, for everyone who loves them, for everybody who's watching. May it be educational, helpful, ultimately, and may it help everybody who has read about it or glimpsed anything about it to become more conscious about our relationships, how we love, and how we get our needs met, so that we don't end up playing out our own worst flaws and tragedies in our romantic partnerships.
Yes, I just have a question about the King of Wands and the Three of Wands
Yes.
in the place there. Could it mean that, like, since it's more an energy card, the wands, the suit, could it mean that, like, if he's the King of Wands, that he's going to kind of settle, and that she, as the Three of Wands, is kind of in the future as well, in the long term, just going to be going back and forth and kind of wildly not able to resolve her energetic issues?
It could. And, I hadn't looked at it that way, but I think that, typically in those outcome cards, it's not always that it's a match where like one card represents one person
Right.
or the other. But in this case, when you say that, it certainly might represent that. The reason that I thought that it might represent a third case is just because we're on, I think, case number 2 already, but I also do see what you're saying, that if these two cards are each of them in the future,
Right.
he definitely either way comes out further ahead than she does.
Right. I thought of it when you said the king for him. I
Mhm.
thought, there's thank
Yeah.
you.
And I think in part that might be because not only the court of public opinion, but also because his career was more firmly established already than hers was. And that's where I see some of that hidden monetary thing having a larger, longer term impact than maybe we're not able to see right away immediately. So for anyone who felt like I was a little bit extra by talking about this subject, I'm super sorry. I'll be more classy next time, but I also can't help but the fact that this is on the news everywhere, and it's like perfect for looking at a relationship reading where none of us is the one on the table, just being human. That's right. Thank you so much for coming today to Tea and Tarot and learning about these relationship spreads. Good luck using them with your querents, and we'll be back again in a month. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're on the schedule with Nancy Antonucci to come and be our guest speaker at the end of May and lead us in one of the spells from her book, Tarot Spells. So I did, after Linda mentioned she liked that book, I did reach out to Nancy and said to her, hey, would you like to come and speak to my group? And she said yes. So I'll send her another little reminder, because she's had a lot going on, but over the next couple weeks, I'll connect with her, and then we'll kind of get that on the schedule for the end of May. All right, see you later. Bye, everybody.